Everyone, we will record the session for those who registered but were not able to attend so that they will have the recording. Since we have a somewhat smaller room, I would love if people would take a moment and unmute themselves and let us know who all is here. And because Aman is already on camera, I'm going to start with him to model us. If you can just let us know who you are and the institution you're with, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm Almond. Actually, it's Almond, like Almond Joy, like a candy bar. Almond Seal. I'm at Austin College, IR director, and Gardner. We just started partnering with this year, and I kind of want to understand a little more about this. Am I supposed to call the next person?
I'll just go down the
Okay.
line. So Wendy, please, if you would come back around then. Phil.
Good afternoon. I'm Phil Handwerk in the Office of Institutional Research at Wake Forest University.
Great, thank you, Phil. Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Sunnessy. I'm also at Wake Forest University in the Division of Campus Life.
Thank you. Jenny.
I'm Jenny Dean. I am an associate professor of mass communication with Texas Wesleyan University.
Thank you very much. Nicole said in the chat she's not able to join verbally, but she's director of institutional effectiveness at Wake Forest as well. So thank you for joining us. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody else. David, who just joined us, just real quick, we're introducing ourselves and our role in the institution we're with. If you could, please.
Okay. Sorry, I was late. I'm back to back.
No.
I'm David Eaton. I'm with Wake Forest University. I work in our IS department. I focus on our IS data analytics and data governance areas. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. While we're going to run through our introductions from the Gardner staff, I would love it if everyone would take a moment and in the chat write one thing you're hoping to get out of this info session or a reason why you came to join us today, so we can hopefully address everyone's questions and needs with it. And I'll start us off from the Gardner Institute, and that I'm Brent Drake. I'm our Senior Vice President for Operations and Research here at the Gardner Institute. I've been in that role for about 4 years. I'm very happy to be joining you all today. I'm one of the two leads for our Data Culture Academy, and the other is Dr. Perez. I'll let her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you are on the East Coast, this is I'm Ligia Perez, and I'm Assistant Vice President at the Gardner Institute with almost 3 years in September. And I'm also working with Dr. Drake in the Data Culture Academy and the component of a community of practice. Looking forward to working with all of you for a whole year. Thank you. And Katie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Locke, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Gardner Institute. And we're just happy to have you all joining us today.
We have a few Gardner Institute staff who are actually here just to listen into the info session and learn a little bit more. But I am going to call them out just so people know who all is on the call. So Katie Easley, if you would introduce yourself first.
Of course. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Easley. I'm an Assistant Vice President at the Gardner Institute. I'm new to the Institute, so I'm just here to see what this is all about.
Cindy, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Kane, Associate Vice President with the Gardner Institute, and I'm planning to participate in the Institute this year with the goal of learning from all of you and improving my own ability to support institutions.
Brittany.
Hello, I'm Brittany. I'm the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications. I'll be just here in the background helping out with the admission and chat and things like that.
Fantastic. And our absolutely newest member of the Gardner Institute, one of our interns joining us, Kennedy, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Like you said, I am the new summer intern. It's actually my first day today. But I am a marketing student from Florida Gulf Coast University, and I'm very excited to be here.
Again, thank you all for joining us, and I believe everyone is seeing the slide presentation at this point. So we'll go ahead and get started within it. I noticed within the chat that some people had mentioned they want to get an overview of the program, hear specifically about the who, when, and how of it. Great. Interested in understanding it and how it's been used at other institutions. So we will definitely talk towards that. I'm on broadly trying to gauge ROI. We'll speak to it, and maybe we can ask some questions at the end to see if we can get towards what you're trying to accomplish with it, and see if we're a good fit with it as we go. So, but thank you all for sharing, and we'll go from here. So, for those of you who do not know the Gardner Institute, this is the first time you've joined one of our info sessions. We are a now 26-year-old nonprofit that our home office is based in Brevard, North Carolina. And what we have done for those 26 years is partner with colleges, universities, philanthropic organizations, and individual faculty and staff at colleges and universities to help them improve student success on their campus. What we hope to do is push post-secondary education's efforts to help every student have the opportunity to earn a high-value credential from their institution and have greater life fulfillment as a part of that. So if we can bounce on, Katie, to the next slide. Lahi and I have already introduced ourselves. We are the two leads of the Data Academy, so we'll go on from here. We'll talk a little bit about why we started this academy. I'll talk towards my aspects first, then I'll let Lahi add anything she might want to add. So there are two kind of big things that came through with this. One is that we've now been working, we're moving into our fourth cohort of transformation schools. And these are institutions that work with us for 5 years to redesign various aspects of their undergraduate experience to help more of their students succeed on campus. And as a big part of what they do in that, they do an initial assessment with us where we look at where their strengths are in delivering student success on campus, where they have the opportunities to grow. And one thing that kept popping up a lot was around institutional research, data use, data literacy, and data governance on campuses as a thing that institutions really needed to lean into. And so we decided to develop this academy to hopefully help drive some of that at the institutions. The other part of it for me in terms of my personal why is I have now been doing primarily institutional research, institutional effectiveness roles in higher education for going on 26, 27 years now. Specifically worked in IR and IE at a couple of different R1 institutions. And I know the huge impact that we as IR and IE professionals can have on our campuses when we help grant the access necessary to allow people to make effective decisions, and also provide them training and outreach to use it effectively. And I hope that we can help our institutional partners through this academy see the same kind of results on their campuses. So I'll turn over to Lehia to see if there's anything she wants to add in terms of our whys for this.
I would say that pretty much you cover a lot. The reason why we started this, those institutions that, especially the first cohort, the scores for the institutional research were the lowest of the scores of the 11 different rubrics. The Institutional Transformation Assessment Survey kind of compiles into a single survey. And also, like Brent indicates, I've been in higher education for, I'm going to say, just over 20 years in different roles, both in institutional research, academic computing officer, but basically, as well as research in the area of institutional research. And seeing that a lot of people that actually make decisions with the institution sometimes are not basing those decisions on the data that is reflected from their institution, and it's more about what they think about what the institution is about. One instance, I remember, somebody from higher up in the executive, like, no, this institution is not what you're saying that is saying. And it was about the demographic of the institution. And said, yes, 20 years ago when you were here, it was what you had in mind, which was mostly African-American students. But 20 years later, it was mostly Latino students, Hispanic students. This is in Los Angeles, California. And there was no way for him or me to have a straight communication, because he would not kind of give into like, no, that's not possible. So seeing that some people that are at the decision-making position and roles and still not understanding that things change. So that's part of what I think we want to accomplish with this, because it's not just a single person, the institutional research person saying, this is the data. Is more about a team of individuals that go through this process. And it has more weight when it's a kind of like a committee that is working on gathering whatever is the data that you need to share that information with the community. So with this, I'm done with my part. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you. We advance the slide, Katie. So what is it we're talking about with the Data Academy? The Data Culture Academy is a year-long community of practice where we spend the first roughly 2.5 months going through modules on what we believe are the foundational blocks for building a data-informed culture on your. At the end of those 2.5 months, you pick a project that you're going to work on to advance some aspect of data-informed culture on your campus. And then in the community of practice for the remaining roughly 9 months, we do regular check-ins to see progress, to help move questions and roadblocks for you, to allow you to ask from the community ideas on how to advance things. And then we also have a guest speaker or two who will come in and talk about what their efforts have been like on their campuses over time. And when we talk about a data-informed culture at the Gardner Institute, what we mean is that it's an institution that relies on data for all really of their decision-making practices within the university and how they inform improvements. And what that means is that you have an infrastructure that makes sure that you are able to provide the necessary data for all of your faculty and staff that they need to use to perform their job duties to the greatest a degree of their function possible. And part of what makes that possible is that you have governance structures to allow for the proper access and use of the data, as well as data literacy training to help people use the data most effectively and understand it on their campus. Let's go ahead and advance the slide. And actually, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Perez, who's going to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the Academy in terms of who should be involved, as well as what those initial building block modules are that I talked about. So, Lihia, what, please?
Thank you, Brent. So just a little bit about, the team and why. So in this online community of practice, the participants will gain into how an institution can build a sustainable model for a data-informed decision-making around student success, because basically this is about student success. It's not HR data or the financial data, but it's about centered around student success. And so what we want to encourage is the assess your current state. What's the aspects of student data in your institution, identifying what is needed, and to form the next steps for advancing student success. Data literacy, because as I was mentioned before, there will be some people within your institution that they have a certain mind frame, and it is part of I would say the group that will be, or the team that will participate in this, to develop some kind of data literacy center around student success for decision making. We suggest that your team for this experience consists of between 5 to 10 members. I would say, more than 5 is better than less than 5. And among those ones, by role, we encourage to have the director of IR or institutional effectiveness, or the data persons that are making sure that they know where the data is, like data officer. Also representatives from academic affairs and student affairs, people that will have some weight into what they are going to propose within the team, and that they have background in those 2 areas of higher education. Of course, someone from the information technology. We're trying to avoid acronym here. But for writing, it's better just to put the acronym in. So information technology areas. Of course, we want to have faculty members. We say at least 1, but it will be better if it is more than 1, because they are also key for student success in terms of the closeness to the data that actually impacts student success, as well as data champions, other staff or other faculty. Next, please. As Brent was indicating, there are 6 modules, and actually it's 3 months and that will be 2 modules per month, and each module is 90 minutes. And we have developed in the learning management system a project planning guide to walk you through the process of these initial 6 modules. We recommend for you to use it, because then at the end of the 6 modules, when you have to choose a particular project, you have a lot of background for your own institution based on this module. So the module 1, we want the participants to define student success, or to identify how your institution has defined student success. If that has not been defined, maybe that team will define it for the purposes of this project. And also, if you do have it defined, or you're going to define it, to make sure that it's aligned to your strategic plan, or at least to the institution, the overall institution student success goals. Then in module 2, you're going to identify success metrics. So what is it within the whatever was defined as student success, what are those metrics that when you gather the data for that will support that indeed you're heading towards student success. And we recommend that focus on leading indicators, not so much like retention and graduation rates, more leading indicators that any of these individuals in the group can identify that can be done something about before the student actually is just a number or statistics in the retention data. Module 3 is working on mapping the data systems. Where are the data in the different systems, like student information system, the learning management system, maybe a system within the student affairs that has data about student participation, engagement. Then in module 4, which is very complex, is related to data governance, but we have summarized it as developing or identifying those roles and what kind of data is needed at those different roles. For example, the faculty level, what's the data that goes in that role? At the dean's level or the vice president. So it will be pretty much up to the institution to identify those roles. Then in module 5, as we mentioned before too, that once you identify those roles, what are the knowledge or skills needed in order to understand the data that is provided at those different roles within the institution about student success. And with that information, then create or strengthen any data literacy on campus. And then module 6 is engage all stakeholders. And with that, it could be a communication plan, and that could be one of your capstone projects, or a marketing plan, or something that it will share all what you have done from module 1 to module 6, and choosing a particular capstone at the end of module 6 as your project that you're going to be working for the next 9 months. So basically going through these 6 modules and hopefully using the project planning guide, you will be self-assessment to evaluate your current state of the data usage and support at your institution. You're going to identify steps necessary to advance and sustain data usage, and you will undertake institution-specific project related to all 6 outcomes that we have in here, the modules, or just choose one. We have some institutions that only choose something that they can actually complete and is feasible for implementation within the year that they're going to go through this experience. And one of the comments and thank you that we get a lot now with, we had 2 cohorts going through this community of practice, is that they are learning from each other, because these are individuals that not necessarily have communication within the institution. So it's within teams as well as with the peer institutions that are going through the process. So if one institution is already doing something, they can share that information or what they have gone through with another institution that is part of this community of practice. So next, please. Didn't forget this time. So as I mentioned, there were 2 cohorts, and we have several institutions that have developed different projects, and most of them are very feasible, perhaps not, big as a whole campus-wide data governance that could be very complex, but are part of data governance, which is needed for anything in particular if you're going to be using artificial intelligence on your campus and student success. So We have an institution that has established data literacy definitions. So you can start with something very basic as that, because there might be different definitions for the same term. Also have conducted audit of existing data availability, is that they know that there's data about student success all over the place, but they don't really know exactly which system and who is the steward for that data. Also, and this one is quite interesting, build initial data dictionary. Some of them have taken only that project that has taken them almost a year to do it, because they have so many different definitions of what is a student within their institution. Also, some have created a survey to determine the users' data literacy and what are the needs of those students. They have worked on a road show specifically for like deans and vices and faculty, not all over the campus, but just for those type of roles. And they have also built a unified academic advising dashboard. So it's a very varied. It's not necessarily, just only one particular project. It depends on what you as a team for your institution want to do. And we always recommend do something that is not so broad that you cannot implement it. So something very feasible. So like a data dictionary. And so with this, thank you so much. And I'll pass it to Katie.
Thank you, Lihia. So people always want to know what are the next steps. And so I do want to just explain a little bit. If you are part of the transformation process, and I think there are a couple of institutions on, your next steps are simply to let your relationship manager know that you're interested in this process, and we'll work with you to get you registered then. If you are not, I'll talk about that in the next slide, but just to give you those key dates, I know people said in the chat that that's what they were interested in. So the community starts in July on the 16th and goes to June, finishes in June 2027. As Lee had described, those different modules happen in different weeks, and then you have some time in between to focus on getting the work done. And here is the list of the times of the 6 modules. And then, as she said, the community continues after the modules are finished and meet once a month throughout the rest of the year. So we don't have the information here on registration. We are trying a new process, which is why it's not listed on here. But when we send out, we will send out at the end of probably tomorrow, the recording of today's session along with the slides. And we will outline the steps. It's really a simple form that you just need to fill out. And we will work with you to then get your team registered. So we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. You're welcome to raise your hand and ask them live or put them in the chat, whatever works for you. And I want to say thank you for your time today. And I'm
So, if there are any questions that people have?
I have a question for Ammon. Since you've been seeing print in so many different of the experiences that the Gardner engagement that the Gardner Institute had, was this something that you find that it will give some kind of guidance or at least a framework to work with a team for your institution?
I think, yeah, the structure is good. It's a question of finding the bandwidth, right? So folks know we're a small college. The existing Gardner threads, they're ongoing. So pulling 5 to 10 people who aren't already tasked with other things, that's probably a little too much. All of these various threads fall on me and my narrow shoulders, right? So it's like there's only so much really we can put into it. And we have a new president coming in. We're going to be running up a strategic plan so it may be that it comes out of that, like after a year, right? The president's in place, they do the groundwork to form what the new strategic plan is going to be. And then coming out of that, maybe in 27, then we identify something we want to take up on the with the groundwork being the strategic plan. That's what I kind of see. I don't think we could do it this summer. It wouldn't make sense.
And that has been something that I think at least two of the institutions have done that have participated in the Data Culture Academy, in that they focus their project around the implementation of their new strategic plans in terms of helping to define out what are the metrics for those broad goals in the strategic plan. Do we have clear definitions around them? And if so, how do we want to provide those to the campus? What will be our reporting mechanism to allow for that to occur? I think it was two different institutions that have done that within this. So.
And I will just add, in case other people are curious, this is an academy that we do once a year. So the next time we will be offering it will be in the summer of 2027.
Looking at Christopher's question in the chat, for institutions that are part of transformation, do we need a whole group? Could one person do this community of practice? We prefer a team be in place because a lot of the things we wind up talking about are things where we try and get our IR and IE colleagues to think more broadly about how they can collaborate with other groups and on campus to make some of these things occur, as opposed to having to drive everything directly from the institutional research office. Often the point person for these teams is the head of institutional research or institutional effectiveness, and they may be the individual that engages with us the most throughout the course of the year. But we would strongly encourage that you at least have a couple other people in that can help spread the work and help disseminate the work as you go along. Phil, I'm curious as to which schools have gone through this academy previously and how they found the experience. Plus, would it be possible to see syllabi from the modules, get a better sense of what will be covered in those 90 minutes? Yes, we have. I guess I could just ask this directly to Katie. Do we have a problem sharing our syllabi for the academy outside for those who haven't participated yet? Okay. So we can share that along with the video and everything when Katie sends it out with it. We have an agreement that we won't identify specific institutions unless they've already given their permission for us to do so. For instance, we know because they gave us permission, one of those institutions that has been within it is one of our transformation schools, Normandale Community College in Minnesota, that they are one of the ones that focuses around that they did not have a core data governance infrastructure and focused on how they would build their data governance infrastructure within it, and began work on a data dictionary with that. And they had to start from a core element of how are we defining student success on campus and where we want to go for. And that was one of the first things their committee approached. I can't name names. So I'll just say at this point, we've had 10 institutions that have participated within the two cohorts over the last 2 years with it. Overwhelmingly, the thing that pops out for institutions tends to be around governance and literacy issues. But and this is why we provided some of those other examples that were a little bit different. Other things have popped up in terms of, for instance, the institution that wanted to better map its underlying infrastructure of what are the core offices that hold information, who should be the data steward within it, and how can we use that to make a more integrated data environment where those elements are accessible. And then one of the other institutions that very, very specifically and explicitly wanted to focus around how they would do data gathering requirements for building a more unified dashboard for a segment of their population was their advising community. And they used some of the data literacy elements to think about how they would engage that community to get both their requirements and then doing the testing of it afterwards and hosting it across and the training with it. So I know that's not a direct answer, Phil, on the who, but that's kind of where we're at with what we can say at this point.
We could probably reach out maybe to a couple of institutions to see if they would be willing for us to connect them with Phil. So if you like us to do that, just let us know. And I think you're at Wake Forest, so I'm guessing there's, I don't know off the top of my head, some other independent institutions who've gone through this. Like Wake
Yeah, yes, there are a couple, and we can reach out to the leads from the projects to see if they're okay with us disclosing. So.
I wanted to just add a little bit about Christopher just being the single person with this particular experience that is all year long. And one of this, the objective with this is that you create a whole group of people from across units so that it's given different perspective and bringing data from different points of view. And it can really make a difference rather than just a single person with one project, because you will have the perspective of people from student affairs that they have. My experience at Texas A&M at College Station is that student affairs had a tremendous amount of data, and somehow we never were able to link it with the academic affairs or institutional effectiveness. So if you have people from all these different units of the institution, it makes it more like a way of thinking together about student success and how can we unify in many ways access to this data according to role. So that's part of like the whole political aspect of the and strategic aspect of being also working in a group.
And a specific example towards that I can share, because it wasn't a participant, it was actually someone who shared with the community a year ago. John Crooker from UNLV, goes by Skip, talked about in terms of their data literacy program, how they were working with their online educator unit at UNLV with the instructional designers in there to help them build out their data literacy program. So it's kind of an example of how you can help from your community of users to help build a stronger thing, so it doesn't all have to exist directly in office. Other questions anyone might have?
If you want, now might be a good time to turn off the recording. And then if anybody has any questions they prefer to ask not on the recording, they'll have that opportunity. I just want to end this by saying thank you very much for your time today. We really do appreciate it.